Now, one of my favorite things about the Wrigley building is look at the clock on the top there. Now, if you look closely, it just looks like Roman numerals around the clock, right? Those are where the numbers are. That's actually not what they are. They're all W's. Yeah, every single number on that clock is a W standing for Wrigley. Yeah, it's a fun little Chicago Easter egg for you. And the style of architecture is French Beaux Arts style. Ornate bottoms, stack of plain floors, ornate top, that's French Beaux Arts. And the next building I'll talk about is on the right-hand side. This is the Trump International Hotel and Tower, designed by Adrian Smith in 2009. Now, Adrian Smith, he's a world-famous architect. He is world-famous for designing the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Now, the Burj Khalifa, tallest building in the world. Adrian Smith, he is actually a Chicago local. But yes, the Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the world. If you're wondering how tall is the Burj Khalifa, look all the way up to the top of Trump Tower, then just add another Trump Tower on top of it. That is how tall that building is. Now, he's not stopping there, though. Adrian Smith is working on another building in Jeddah called the Kingdom Tower, which is going to which is going to be the equivalent to 2.5 of the Trump Towers. Now, on the right-hand side, coming up on the right, just past this bridge, you're going to see a black box building on the right. Now, that is the last office building of a man named Mies van der Rohe. Now, Mies van der Rohe, very important to the world of architecture. Now, the reason I say that, to put his work into perspective, looking at this black box building on the right, you may think it's just kind of a plain-looking building, but before Mies van der Rohe started in architecture in the 1940s, no building looked like this one. I know it's kind of hard to believe because if you have been to any modern American city, every building looks like this. But he developed this style. It's called the International Style of Black Box Modernism, and it basically laid the groundwork for modernism, the modernist movement of architecture. Now, whenever he was coming up in architecture in the 1940s, people were designing their buildings with stone cladding, fancy ornamentation, but his whole philosophy in architecture was less is more. Now, he was also a teacher. He taught a man named Bertrand Goldberg, who I'm pretty sure disagreed with this less is more philosophy, because he designed these two buildings coming up on the right. Yes, this is Marina City Towers, designed by Bertrand Goldberg in 1967, where Mies van der Rohe's philosophy was less is more. Bertrand Goldberg's was a little bit more complicated. He said there's no right angles in nature, so there shouldn't be any in architecture. And that it explains the shape of Marina City Towers. Now, the reason you may notice it's called Marina City is because this building was originally built like a city inside of a city. Back in the day, in 1967, nobody really wanted to live downtown. There wasn't a lot to do. So Bertrand Goldberg designed it with a roller rink, a movie theater, a grocery store, a doctor's office, basically any accommodation you needed to live downtown. Now, common questions I will get about that building. One, what do the apartments look like on the inside? I got a weird answer for you. A slice of pie. Yeah, you enter at the pointy end and it grows outward. The other common question I will get is, has anybody ever driven off of the parking lot before? Yes, twice. But don't worry, it's for TV and movies. Yeah. During the filming of a commercial in the early 2000s, and more notably, Steve McQueen's last film, The Hunter, they drove a car off of that building as well. Now, they're called colloquially the Corn Cob Buildings, and they're the most photographed buildings in Chicago according to Instagram. Now, coming up on the right, we're going to see the last remaining one of the last remaining warehouse buildings in Chicago. Now, this is the Reed Murdoch Center, and I want you guys to really take this building in. I want you to look at it for 5 seconds. Ready? Go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you looked at it. Can anybody tell me what's weird about this building? Just yell it out if you do. Oh, that's the first person to find the skeleton! Yeah. No, there is a skeleton in the window waving, but the thing that is actually weird about this building, there's two things other than the skeleton. The center clock tower, I want you to look at that and then count the columns of windows to the right. I'll do it for you. There's 6. But look to the left. There's only 5 columns of windows on this side. It's asymmetrical. Why? Well, this building was built in 1914. This bridge was put in the 1930s. Whenever they put the bridge in, they had to extend out the street, knock down a portion of the building, so it wasn't always asymmetrical. Now, on the right-hand side, you're going to see 300 North LaSalle, very environmentally friendly building, designed by Picard and Chilton in 2009. Now, whenever I say it's environmentally friendly, that building is made with over 60% recycled materials. Would you guys believe me if I told you? No air conditioning units in that building. Now, don't worry, nobody's suffering in there. The way they cool the building down is actually using river water. They pump it in through the walls, pump it out cleaner than it already was. Now, this is effective. The river stays about 65 to 70 degrees during the summertime. Now, going back in time again, 1931, the Marshall Field Corporation wanted to consolidate all 18 of its warehouse buildings into one building. If you're thinking 18 warehouses in one building, that would be huge. Well, look to the right, you would be correct. Yes, this massive building right here is the Reed Murdoch Center, designed for Marshall Field, which is more commonly known today as Macy's. Now, Macy's no longer owns it. It's used by an office corporate furniture company. It's still a warehouse building. It's called the Merchandise Mart. Like I said, designed in 1931 by Graham Anderson, Probst & White. Whenever this building was first built, it was the largest concrete building in the country. Today, it is only number 2. Does anybody know what number 1 is? If you do, yell it out. The Pentagon. Yeah. Now, this building has over 4.2 million square feet of space, over 8 miles of hallway, and until the 90s, that building had its own zip code. Yeah, now the Kennedys purchased that building in the 1940s for $13 million. They only paid back taxes on it, and then they sold it in the 90s for $576 million. So yes, quite the return on investment. So if you're worried about the Kennedys' financial situation, why? Because they also bought this land right here. This is Wolf Point. To our right, this building is called Wolf Point East Luxury Apartment. Across the peninsula is Wolf Point West. And then in the center here, we have Salesforce Tower. It's a work in progress. Should be completed by 2022, open in 2023. Now, Wolf Point also holds some historical significance. This is actually where Marquette and Joliet, the first non-native visitors to Chicago, were first brought by the Potawatomi. The Potawatomi people brought them here, and they kept referring to this area as Chicagoa. That's where we get our name. Now, they thought they were talking about the name of the land. The Potawatomi, they thought, or Marquette and Joliet thought they were referring to the name, but they were actually wrong. The Potawatomi were actually talking about what grew here. Natural leeks, garlic, and onion would grow in this area, and in the summers it would become very fragrant, so Chicagoa roughly translates to smelly onions. Yes, that is true. So take that, New York. You may have the Big Apple, but we're the smelly onion. Now on the right-hand side, I'm sure this building has caught some of your eye. This is 150 North Riverside, and yes, it does look like it's built upside down with its very small base. And that 40-foot base, the reason it has such a small base is for the longest time, this area was not being developed because it was too small. There was a river on this side, train tracks on the opposite side, but Getch and Partners had the nifty idea, let's just do a little base, big rest of the building. Now the way that they did that is, do you see these silver I-beams right here? Those large, thick silver I-beams going up the side of the building? Those are made of the world's strongest Luxembourgian steel. Those go all the way up the side of the building and down into the bedrock underground. Also at the top of that building, on the inside, there is 4 giant tanks of water filled with over 160,000 gallons on a set of wheels. That is called a mass damper system, and if wind blows that building in any direction, that mass damper system sends those giant tanks of water the opposite way, counterbalancing that wind resistance. Several buildings in the Chicago area have those giant tanks of water at the tops of their buildings. Now on the right-hand side, we have the Boeing building, built on top of Amtrak train tracks. So the Boeing Corporation does own this building, but they actually have to lease the air that it occupies. That is because in the United States we have something called air rights construction. Now that is whenever you purchase property in the U.S., you own all of the air above it, so nobody can develop on top of you. So the Boeing Corporation does have to lease the air from Amtrak. Now this taller portion of the Boeing building, it is supported by a stilt system underneath it around the train tracks, but this shorter side of the Boeing building has no underneath supports. No stilt system, no foundation, nothing underneath. That is because it is built on top of switching tracks. Switching tracks just take up way too much room. They come into a stilt system. So that side of the building is not standing at all. It is hanging. If you look behind the boat at the top of the shorter side of the building, you're going to see that giant white X. That giant white X is called a truss. It is gripping the top of the building like this. If I were to hold a cup up from the top like that, it is gripping the top of that building. There are 5 of those trusses, one after the other, holding up that building and sustaining it over those switching tracks. You can even walk up to a portion of that building and run your hand underneath it because there's nothing underneath. And on the right, this is 2 North Riverside Plaza, wonderful example of Art Deco architecture with a focus on strong symmetrical form and a strong geometrical shape. Now these next 4 buildings on the right, they all make up the Gateway Center. Now that is Gateway 1, this one is Gateway 2, these first 2 these black ones, that's Gateway 1 and Gateway 2. Then that white building that's ahead of us, that is Gateway 3. Anybody want to guess the name of that building that's a little farther away? Stephanie. No, it is Gateway 4. Yeah. Now, the Gateway Center, these first 2, Completely identical, twins. The only ornamentation you're going to find on these two buildings, they are international style. They were not designed by Mies van der Rohe. They were designed by students of his who worked for Skidmore, Owings & Merrill at the time. But the only ornamentation you'll find on an international style building is in between the windows. In between the windows, and if you don't want to look behind the moat, it's about to come up again, you're going to see these little embossed lines. Those are just black I-beams. Their only purpose is to draw your eye upward. Now, Riverview, we're starting at Riverview. Gateway 3, this white one right here. Fun fact about it once changed color. Yes, it used to be gray, it changed to white. That is because it was clad in precast limestone paneling. Very cheap and easy to replace. So Skidmore, Owings & Merrill said, let's get rid of that boring old gray color, move on to the ever more exciting white. And that's what they did. And if you're wondering what it looked like before, the bottom floor, they did not change. It is the same color as it used to be, as this darker gray. And then on to Gateway 4 is this green glass building that's further away on the very end. That curved green glass building on the right, that was designed by James DeStefano. Now, James DeStefano was asked, why didn't you put any ornamentation on your building? And he said, I did. I covered my building in mirrored glass so that all the surrounding buildings would become my building's ornamentation. Now, folks, I want you guys to look up and to the left. Keep your gaze there in between these two lighter colored buildings because a larger building is going to start to come into view in between them. And I'd like to introduce this next building like a giant professional wrestler. So, standing at 1,456 feet, designed in 1974 by Bruce Graham and Fosler Kahn, 110 stories, 16,100 windows. It's the WILLIS Tower. Say it with me. Now, another fun fact about this building, raise of hands, who here has seen the film Ferris Bueller's Day Off? It's an 80s film, classic Chicago watch. You know the scene where he's dancing in the parade and his dad looks down from his office building? That is his dad's office building. That's where his dad works. And if you're saying, hold on, Ferris was not dancing over there, doesn't look anything like it did in the movie, well, Ferris was actually dancing like 6 blocks away on Dearborn. He was editing. Yeah, magic of movies. Now, talking about the magic of movies, I want you guys to keep your eye line with the Riverwalk. This is our Riverwalk. It was completed in 2016. It has 8 different sections, all with the...
And like we saw like the day in the park.
Hello, Caroline. Now this Chicago.